Welcome to Poland. We'll be diving into the stories of some of the great saints of modern times. And since we're here on pilgrimage with well over 1 million young people and our Pope, we'll be diving into the stories of some saints in the making.
There's a movement happening. Catholics who are bold and contagious, who aren't afraid to make their faith known because they know it's what makes life worth living. I'm Stefanick, a husband, father of 6, and I speak to over 80,000 people every year. And all around the world, I get to see that movement as I meet Catholics who inspire me and who show just how amazing faith makes everyday life. Welcome to Real Life Catholic.
If you want to understand some of the great saints of modern time, you got to understand where they came from. Poland is the epicenter of some of the greatest sufferings in the last few centuries. In the 1800s, if you look for Poland on a map, you wouldn't find it. It was taken over by 3 warring empires that surrounded it, who figured, hey, instead of crossing through Poland to fight each other, let's just split it 3 ways. And the Polish people were really passionate about preserving their culture through the arts, through acting, through their poetry, and through their Catholic faith. That preservation of culture is how they outlast dictators and empires. That's part of the Polish soul, it's part of their spirit. That's why John Paul II, before he was a priest, he was an actor, he's a poet. Culture outlasts tanks and guns. Polish people know that. They regained their national sovereignty after World War I and enjoyed that until the Nazis took over in World War II. The Nazis hated Polish culture. They turned this into a slave state. They put the famous Auschwitz here, where over 1 million people lost their lives. And to give you an idea of how badly Poland suffered in World War II, 1/5 of the population didn't make it through that war. If Europe was torn asunder in World War II, the torn heart of it all, we're standing right in it in Poland. This is the soil that grew the great saints of modern time. You know, here's a spiritual law that I kind of hate, but it just is. Heroic souls are only chiseled out from the rest of us by suffering. I so badly want to be the patron saint of people who sit on a beach and have someone feed them grapes. But there's no job opening for that guy. It's only epic sagas and struggles and trials that bring about heroes. And that's what the Polish saints were. The Polish saints of modern times are nothing less than epic spiritual heroes who found themselves in a battle for the soul of their nation and the future of humanity. Selfie.
All of life is a pilgrimage. It's a journey to heaven. At World Youth Day, it's clear that even if we feel like it sometimes, we never journey alone.
My faith journey began long before I was even born. My family's from Iraq. There was bomb threats in the village we were at, and we were told that we had to get up everything we had and just leave. My parents walked alongside thousands of other Chaldean Catholics on a 3-day journey on foot through the mountains and into Turkey. It was there a month later where my mom had me. A lot of people said that there was no way that a malnourished baby like me could even survive. There's men, grown men, that were dying left and right because of disease and starvation. Yet, somehow I survived. I've lived in Michigan my whole life, but I've always felt a very deep connection to my roots back home. Growing up, my father instilled a deep desire for prayer. He taught us how to read and write the language and read and write the same prayers that the apostles first brought into that region in the Middle East. I grew up falling deeper and deeper in love with God through this ancient culture that my father had made sure that we didn't forget, even though we came to the U.S. As faithful as I was growing up, as soon as I hit about the age of 13, I started to feel like church was routine. So I kind of took a step back and I was like, I'm gonna take it from here, God. You're amazing, you're great, but I'm gonna do it my way, and I did. For a very long time, I never wanted anyone to know about where I came from or how I was born. I wanted to forget about it. It's hard to think about people dying, and not only just people, but your own people. It wasn't something I was proud of. It was something that I wanted to leave in the past. I was able to find that little still voice inside me that said, hey, you were created for something greater. There's purpose in everything you've experienced. And you're here right now. You're here for a reason. And as soon as I felt that, I had that encounter with the Holy Spirit. Even though I didn't necessarily want to go back to church or even tell my dad that, hey, I had this encounter, I kind of kept it hidden. I knew that there was something there. So I came back and I started to go to church by myself. To get to know God more on a personal level, I didn't want to just go through the rituals. I didn't want it to feel like routine. So I went to adoration. I just took it all to Him. And I laid it there. And it took a lot of tears. But He transformed the anger and He softened my heart. It's in that silence where I was able to not only get to know God more, but to fall in love with Him all over again, just as I did as a child. During this process of going to Jesus, I started to really think about suffering. Despite everything that's happened in my life and everything and all of the suffering, that God still reigns, and that with His grace and mercy, anything in the world is still possible. Being here at World Youth Day has been beyond amazing. One of the biggest joys from World Youth Day for me has been randomly seeing the Iraqi flag waving in the middle of the square. I remember literally dropping my bag and just sprinting over to this huge group of people that had these huge smiles on their face. Tears instantaneously welled up in my eyes, and it was such a blessing to be able to connect with these people that have seen so much suffering that I felt so deeply connected to for so much of my life. And that's ultimately what this pilgrimage has really been about for us, is coming together in solidarity from all around the world and connecting and resting in His love and His mercy.
Wherever a World Youth Day is held, it's among the largest gatherings in that nation's history. No rock concert, no band, no war, no cause has drawn crowds like the millions who gather for World Youth Days to celebrate their Catholic faith in Jesus Christ.
I'm very excited because I think Poland is different. It's Europe. There's a lot more history. I'm excited and have a different mindset, and am hoping that God answers a lot of questions that I have.
It's Papa Francesco.
For see the Pope.
Already having that connection with the people from all around the world, and like getting to see that there are people just like you who share the same faith and have the same belief as you, whether or not they come from the same place. It's extremely powerful to know that you're not alone, and that there are like 2 million, 3 million other people in the world that share the same view that you do and that believe in the same God that you do. It's the perfect opportunity for me to really open my mind and my heart and my ears to God and be able to hear what He's calling me to do and what my vocation is.
Italiano e siciliano, questo è l'italiano.
In Italy of Sicily.
Siamo italiani e veniamo dalla Sicilia. We are Italian from Sicily. La Sicilia è bella.
La Sicilia è bella, pane e panelle, pane e cameosa. L'arancino.
Come here in the Sicily.
Hidden inside the walls of a convent that John Paul II would walk by on his way to work, there was a nun. Nothing was really special about her. Even her own sister didn't notice much about her. But she was a true prophetess. Jesus appeared to her for 7 years before her death with a message for the world. And that message was divine mercy. He said that His mercy is like the ocean. There's literally no limit to how much mercy He can have for us. There's no sin that He can't forgive. And that our trust is like a bucket. The more trust we have, the more mercy we can get. John Paul II ended up canonizing St. Faustina. He established the Sunday after Easter as Divine Mercy Sunday, and he died in the vigil of Divine Mercy Sunday. How amazing that that message of mercy would be given to the world in Krakow, Poland, a country where during World War II, 1/5 of the population died. Given to the world so close to Auschwitz. Because sometimes when we're face to face with evil that's that huge, the only answer is something as simple as that one word, mercy. How can I possibly be forgiven for such a horrible sin that I committed? How can I possibly forgive somebody else? How can I possibly be healed and move on with my life? The only answer is the arms of Jesus Christ open wide to the world, no matter what. and inviting us to have the same posture as him. Jesus, I trust in you.
My name's Tom Langrell. I'm 21 years old and I'm from Sydney, Australia. I've been lucky to grow up in a Catholic family, really good, strong Catholic devout parents and siblings who also practice their faith. My faith was really tested for the first time about 2 years ago when my sister passed away suddenly. She fell ill and she was far too young. She was only 23 years old. And this was a huge shock to my family and myself, and it really, shook our family a lot. For the first time, I'd actually completely relied on my faith because at times I grew bitter, frustrated, impatient, and trying to answer all these questions and try to come to an understanding of why and what happened. And my sister had a devotion to Divine Mercy and Saint Faustina. She read her diary all the time. She had her image everywhere. I didn't really know much about the Divine Mercy until my sister actually passed away, and we actually discovered all these, writings of hers and everything like that. Through the passing of my sister, myself, my immediate family have fallen in love with this, Divine Mercy message, and so many of my friends and everyone who I've spoken to didn't know about the Divine Mercy message until my sister had passed away. So there was, in so much hardship and suffering, there is also so much good that comes out of it. In prayer, I was finally able to just let these questions go. By doing that, you just hand over all your anxieties and troubles to him, and you can be completely relieved of the burden. So that's what I found, and this took me a year and a half, 2 years. When I finally let go of it all, it was just a huge weight and burden off my shoulders. Upon my sister's passing, I can just see the fruits and the good works that are coming of this, and it's changing people's lives. It's changed my life. It's really helped me to grow in my faith and take my faith seriously, and really cemented it, made it really solid. It was wavering at times before my sister's passing, but since then I've just learnt that I'm going to be practicing my faith for the rest of my life, and it really is the backbone that keeps me surviving and thriving each day. It's just a beautiful opportunity to actually be here in Poland, the city of mercy, in the year of mercy, praying to saints, Saint Faustina and JP2, who just spread the word of mercy in the last century.
St. Stanislaus is entombed in the heart of Krakow at Wawel Cathedral. He was an 11th century bishop who stood up to his king.
You see, his king was really renowned for his immoral and violent lifestyle, particularly when it came to women. So he reached out to this political leader to urge him to convert, to save his soul multiple times, and the king kept pushing him away, and eventually Stanislaus, to make his point clear, excommunicated the king. Not to be vindictive, but to show him, look, you're separated from God, you need to do something to fix this before you die. The king's response was to send subjects to kill Stanislaus. The subjects didn't want to because they loved their bishop. The king went off and found Stanislaus celebrating Mass and hacked him to death with his own hands.
By all accounts, his ministry failed, but in reality, he became the symbol of enduring strength in the face of dictators that the bishops of Krakow have imitated ever since, including one famous bishop who became St. John Paul II.
John Paul II had really good reason to be afraid. He knew just how fragile life could be. When he was 8 years old, his mom died. When he was 12, his big brother died. When he was 20, he came home and found his dad dead on the floor. He said, "I never felt more alone in my entire life." Lost his whole family by the time he was 21. See, he knew how fragile life could be. As a young man, he also experienced Nazis and communists taking over his country. So not only did he know how fragile life could be, he experienced firsthand how wicked his fellow man could be. The natural tendency to be to retreat, to become a fearful person. But he wasn't afraid of anything. He took as a central theme of his papacy the words that Jesus spoke more than any other in sacred scripture: be not afraid. Instead of retreating in fear or closing his heart off, he had this way of optimistically embracing the whole world with the beauty and message of the gospel. He lived out those words like nobody else. When he was Bishop of Krakow, he constantly found himself at odds with the communist authorities. In his diocese, they built a town called Nowa Huta, which means new town. It was to be a communist utopia. They promoted free love. They set up work schedules so that parents could barely spend any time with their kids, so the state would raise them. Imagine no religion. They did. It was miserable. And it was also to be the first town in Poland that would have no Catholic church. The people of the town built a cross where they thought a church should be. The communists bulldozed it. The people would build it up again. The communists bulldozed it again. It was at that that cross that John Paul II, when he was Bishop of Krakow, would go and celebrate Christmas Eve Mass with his people, with thousands of the faithful gathered around him in the freezing cold, often with snow falling on them, and angry communist generals looking on. Imagine what it did for the soul of this people when that guy became the first Polish Pope. 2 years after he was elected Pope, he came back to Poland, and millions of the faithful came out to greet him. They were chanting in the streets, "We want God, we want God." Within 20 years, communism fell in Eastern Europe without a shot being fired. The communist authorities, who were literally shaking in their boots in 1979, they knew back then they didn't have a prayer. Look, sometimes we're so afraid of death we never live, so afraid of our own wounds that we never face them and heal, so afraid of conflicts we let relationships die instead. Guys, the power that made heaven and earth has got your back. Be not afraid.
My name is David. I'm from west of Poland, from Leszno. Saint John Paul II was a big inspirational person to me. He, more than anyone, taught me what is to be a man of Christ, to live my Catholic faith to full. I was born, raised in Poland with my mother and grandmother, who are amazing person. My grandmother gave me a faith. I went with her to the church always. I do not remember a lot, but I remember her smile and church and the Mass, Holy Mass. I lived with my mother and grandmother because my dad left me when I was born. My grandmother died when I was 9 years old, and my mother, she drinks a lot, and that's why I went to foster family. His mother died when he was very young. He has got a hard situation too. I can say that I understand his situation. The church rescued him too. I can say that I went deeper into the faith. Not only Mass on Sunday, but deeper. The thinking who I am, where I'm going, what's my destiny. The John Paul II gave me a hope, so I can say that John Paul II was a spiritual father to me. His words and his life touched me deeply and inspired me and challenged me to set my life to course for greatness. John Paul II has taught me what it's to love God and persevere through the many challenges and struggles in life. I hear John Paul II words, hope in spite of everything. Be not tempted to give up. Live courageously. Be faithful. Be not afraid, David. Be not afraid. To me, this is what it means to trust in Jesus and His Holy Mother Mary. This is what it means to be a son of Poland, a son of Pope John Paul II, a son of God, who is my Father.
I'm in a place that John Paul II called the Golgotha of the 20th century, Auschwitz. According to some estimates, over 1 million people lost their lives here, and among them was a priest, Father Maximilian Kolbe. And when he was a little boy, his parents got really exasperated with him. He often misbehaved, and his mom said, "What's going to become of you?" And that question cut him to the heart. He went to his room and he was wondering, what's going to become of me? And often in the darkest moments of our lives, God reminds us He sees more in us than we see in ourselves. And as he's sitting there wondering what's going to become of him, the Blessed Mother appeared before this little boy holding 2 crowns, one for chastity, one for martyrdom. She said, "Pick one." And he reached out and he chose both. He received the crown of chastity, he became a Franciscan, and he gave his life in service to God and His people. The crown of martyrdom he received here. He was thrown in Auschwitz for speaking against the Nazis, and while he was here, a prisoner escaped. Now, to try to deter any other prisoner from ever thinking of escaping, they'd line up everyone who was left, and they'd randomly pick people in the lineup. They put them in a small room, shut and lock the door, no food, no water, until they died. A man fell to his knees that day when he was chosen and started to sob, "What about my wife? What about my kids?" Father Kolbe was there, and he stepped out of line. He walked right past the guards, right past the guard dogs, straight up to the commander at Auschwitz, and people who survived said they remembered the commander was shaking in the presence of Father Kolbe. Oh, he had the power of an empire behind him. but he was standing in the presence of greatness. He said, "What do you want?" "I want to take his place." I said, "What, are you crazy?" He said, "I'm a Catholic priest." Then a miracle happened. Instead of sending them both to their deaths, he said, "Fine, switch them out." Instead of hearing howls of pain and curses from the starvation bunker that week, they heard people singing hymns of praise to God. After 12 days, Father Kolbe was the only one left alive, and they injected him with carbolic acid to end his life. His last act was to bless the men who executed him. All the powers of empire, they rise and fall around us, they come and go. But acts of charity, they endure forever. And people who lay down their lives in love and service of humanity, they blaze like the sun for all eternity. St. Maximilian Kolbe, pray for us. I was blessed to be the MC for the English-speaking pilgrims, 60,000 of them over 3 days. The pilgrims gather in Poland this week from literally every nation on earth, and were sent out to be, in the words of Pope Francis, apostles of mercy. Make no mistake about it, brothers and sisters, the Catholic faith that you hold, the message of mercy, the best news that mankind has ever received, has come to you at a great cost. The first members of your family line that converted and received the best news in history probably did so risking their lives. And now the best news in history, the light of the world, the truth that sets us free, has been entrusted to you. It's up to you to hand it down to the next generation. Sister Faustina had received a word from Jesus in one of her many prophecies, that there will be a spark that comes from Poland that will prepare the world for the second coming of Jesus Christ. And as we think of that, I think Sister Faustina was the spark you, was Maximilian Kolbe. Maybe more obviously it was John Paul II who started this whole World Youth Day movement. But then as I heard the words of Pope Francis last night, commissioning you to be apostles of mercy, commissioning me to be an apostle of mercy, to embark on the adventure of making Jesus known to the world, it struck me. Yeah, those saints are the spark. But you know what else is the spark from Poland? It's you and me. Jesus is sending us to be apostles of mercy, to prepare the way for Him. And I know we feel incapable, we feel small. We feel afraid when it comes to going home and facing the people who might make fun of us if we say, yeah, that was the best week of my life. Because I fell in love with Jesus in a deeper way than I ever had before. Have courage, because it's all in your hands, and you can do it by the grace of God. And look, sometimes we approach prayer and we're thinking, God, when I go home from the World Youth Day experience, help me, Lord, just to not crumble and have an anxiety attack when my parents have another fight. Help me not crumble under the peer pressure from my friends who just go along with the party. Help me not crumble and keep my mouth shut. When it comes time to speak about you, and I'm afraid of what people are going to think about me. Guys, we ask too small. You're an apostle of mercy, a recipient of the best news in history. How about we start asking big? How about we start praying like this? Jesus, open up my heart so rivers of living water can flow from me to a world that's hungry and thirsty for hope and for mercy. Let's make that our prayer. So this is how you take a break from the sun at a standstill in the security. Blazing heat. You just duck down. It's the dark side of World Youth Day. Every World Youth Day culminates when all the pilgrims take a long walk to a vigil and a mass with the Pope. And since there's no real way to make a walk with 3 million people in the heat comfortable, that's where our spiritual offering to God comes in. Our group walked 20 miles in 2 days, went to the bathroom in porta potties, and slept in the dirt. But when you see it all as an offering to God, it has purpose. And that made the whole experience strangely joyful. So after the 8-mile journey, we've arrived at what I think is the worst station. Behind the stage, across the street, by the bathroom. Hallelujah! After 8 miles, every place looks good.
All of life is a pilgrimage. It's a journey to heaven. We grow, try our best to figure out the roadmap, give it our best effort to handle the discomforts along the way. And it always feels like it ends partway through, but it ends in eternal glory. Somehow the journey's all the more beautiful when we remember that we're not on this road alone. We're with the saints who have gone before us. We're with each other, the saints in the making.
Queen of all the cats.
This is how pilgrims lose their minds when they've walked 8 miles and find out there are 5 more miles to go.
In the morning.